And the winner was Darren Till as he brutally erased Luke Rockhold in one of Misfits' most explosive KOs of all time.
I mean, Darren Till is very quickly becoming like the face of Misfits boxing. An ex-UFC fighter who talks a lot of shit, and he can fucking fight.
Little fantasy matchups have come up since this win against Luke Rockhold. Yo, Carl Froch, he was there. Darren Till called him out, and now they're also pinning him up against Jake Paul.
And honestly, I think Darren Till can win that fight pretty comfortably.
A clash for the interim middleweight title between Tony El Cucuy Ferguson and Super Salt Papi.
Good for Tony Ferguson, because I mean, he's off a 8-fight losing streak.
On the other side of the coin, yeah, Salt Papi, I was expecting a lot more from him. I thought this was a very winnable fight for him.
I think Salt Papi was definitely hyped like way too much early on in his career. So I think he lacks experience, and I think he lacks a little bit of mentality.
Welcome back to another episode of the Last Round Podcast, where we cover everything from traditional boxing to influencer boxing and everything in between. In today's episode, we'll be going over Misfits 22, headlined by Darren Till, as he KO'd Luke Rockhold in Manchester this past weekend. But before we get into the episode, make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all forms of social media. Lastly, we're trying to build up a community on Discord, and you guys joining would be greatly appreciated. And now, diving into the episode, we had the MFB Bridgerweight World Championship title on the line, the most prestigious championship belt any professional fighter could win here on Misfits this past weekend. And the winner was Darren Till as he brutally erased Luke Rockhold in one of Misfits' most explosive KOs of all time. Thoughts about that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that Darren Till, since the beginning of this year, he's been making a lot of noise, and he continues to deliver on that promise. And I feel like Misfits is happy, the fans are happy, and I'm pretty sure Darren Till is happy as well. I mean, this is an outcome that, he was expecting. He made it look so easy, and I know, if I'm mistaken, they never fought in the MMA world or in the UFC. So yeah, for them to like get it on in a different sport later on in the career, I think it was interesting, but I think it's really good for Darren Till, and I'm expecting really big things for next year for him.
Yeah, he's been a great addition to Misfits. I mean, an ex-UFC fighter who talks a lot of shit. He's still relatively in his prime at 32 years old, and he's adapted very well to boxing. I mean, he just took out Luke Rockhold, who is a very, very good fighter in the UFC, and he made it look easy, like you said. So, I mean, Darren Till is very quickly becoming like the face of Misfits boxing.
Yeah, I mean, he came into the scene back in January when he was supposed to take on Tommy Fury, but then Tommy Fury backed out, claiming that Darren Till was going to kick him, aka he cowered his way out. But I mean, look, Darren Till has been on a crazy run this past year. He's been on 3 headliners now, and he's enjoying it. I mean, he's probably Misfits' most active fighter as of right now. I mean, 3 times in a row. I mean, a lot of these fighters fight like once every year. So
yeah, where the fuck is Dean?
Dean, he claimed he's injured, and then he said he has a fight coming up. No one cares about him anyways, but everyone cares about Darren Till. I mean, he's a headliner. He's out there selling shows over in the UK, and he's performing in grand fashion. I mean, it's another guy he stops, and this one was by far the most brutal one, and honestly the most dominant one as well. I mean, he was beating Luke Rockhold from corner to corner since the beginning of the first round when he dropped him the first time, whooped his ass in the second, and then ultimately finishing him off in the third round. But a lot of talks have been, a lot of little fantasy matchups have come up since this win against Luke Rockhold and that tremendous KO in the third round from Darren Till. I mean, people were saying, yo, Carl Froch, he was there. Darren Till called him out, and Carl Froch ended up leaving the arena before the call out commenced. But I mean, that's a matchup that people are saying, "Oh, look at that!" And now they're also pinning him up against Jake El Gallo Paul. How do you guys see that matchup for Darren Till? Let's start with Carl Froch.
Yeah, I think for me, I thought it was a little bit of a pussy move on Carl's part. Him getting visibly upset that Till got out of the ring and starts like trying to go for him, and then he has to have security to hold him off. But he called him out, and then he called him out to his face, and then he called him out on the microphone. And then I don't know why Carl decides to walk away. You know what I'm saying? I think this is a guy who a lot of people don't like the idea of like an influencer type of boxing matchup. He's always been very critical on Jake Paul and what he does and stuff like that. And so, I mean, if that's the case, why doesn't he just fight this dude who isn't really a boxer? This guy was a MMA fighter. He grew up fighting in MMA his whole life, and then now he tries to make a switch. Why not try to go for an easy payday? You know what I'm saying? That would be an easy fight that they could sell out in that famous arena that he always likes saying.
Yeah, that is true. Honestly, I think he has been one of the biggest haters for the influencer boxing whole scene. But Darren Till is no influencer boxer. He's no influencer fighter. This guy's the real deal, right? Like this guy, he's fought UFC many years. He was a maybe top 15, top 10 guy, I believe. And in Misfits boxing, I mean, he's doing great. He's knocking out all these guys. For Carl Froch, I think that's a great fight, honestly. I don't know how old Carl Froch is, though. That's the one thing. I think he looks pretty old, honestly. He's got those gray hairs going on. And Darren Till with the ready 32 years old. I mean, it's pretty noticeable. So Darren Till, I feel like he's getting better every single time. Sometimes I think it takes a while, especially for UFC fighters, to transition their boxing from MMA boxing to pure traditional boxing. And I think Darren Till slowly has been getting a lot more comfortable with it, and this past fight it definitely showed. He looked his best ever.
Yeah, I mean, he's had three main events this past year, and then I think he's always gotten better. He's always looked better, and I think the proof is in his pudding. You know what I'm saying? He folded Luke sideways. Like, that is I could not believe what I was seeing, bro, because he had already dropped him earlier, and then I think we were just waiting for that one punch, and then he just folded him like a chair. Yeah,
and I used to think that Darren Till didn't really have that much power, honestly. But, I mean, he showed great knockout power in this last fight.
You know what I'm liking? I'm liking the fact that he seems a lot more comfortable. He seems to have... You know how a lot of MMA fighters, when they box, they usually have a wider stance. I feel like his is still kind of like... longer than normal, but I think it looks a little bit more shorter now, and I think he looks a lot more quicker on his feet, which is another problem that a lot of UFC fighters have. They like to be a lot more stationary. I think he was a lot more quicker. I mean, he had a hunt down Luke, because Luke was just on his feet on the bike for the most of the match, and so Till really had to like kind of be like tight, but also kind of be on the move as well, ready for any point that he could counter or attack Luke. So with that being said, like, I'm very interested to see what happens next with these matchups. I think for sure, if he fights Carl Froch, they can fill up Wembley Stadium. If he fights Jake Paul, that could also be such an interesting matchup as well. Jake Paul is such a hot guy right now within the boxing scene, so that would make sense, I think, and I think it would make sense for everyone. I think everyone would win.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so exactly. Look, Carl Froch, just looked him up. He's 48 years old, so he's on the older side, which, he would, for Carl Froch, for being such a critic of influencer boxing, he's the one who's always calling out Jake Paul, though. Yeah. Saying, let's get it on, Jake Paul. So, I mean, he is of the age that Jake Paul does pick his opponents, so, it is a possibility, but I think it's unlikely. Regardless of that, yeah, I mean, look, Darren Till, 32, he's still young. He's still, like you said, somewhat in his prime, and he's transitioned exceptionally well here in boxing, and he's enjoying it at Misfits, and it clearly shows because he's constantly fighting, he's constantly active. Mams Taylor and the rest of the big guys, CEOs there at Misfits like him as well. They're letting them be this active, considering the fact like you have their other fighters like Dean the Great, Lo Cray Cray, some other guys, who are, big stars within Misfits, but I mean, they're fighting like once every fucking year. So
It's because they're all pussies, honestly. I
Yeah.
mean, they don't really want to take big fights. They always want to be the A side. They always want to do this and that, have little advantages. Darren Till is the real deal, man. That's what I like about him. I think that's why a lot of fans are really gravitating towards him, because like he's brash, he's himself, and he can fucking fight. So like he's quickly becoming a fan favorite. I think Misfits did a fantastic job getting him, and if they're smart, they should keep on pushing him.
yeah, he's clearly their cash cow as of right now without KSI in the mix. He's the guy who's constantly gravitating, getting the fans into the arena, and not only that, I mean, he's putting up fantastic performances. So I'm very happy watching Darren Till. He's very happy fighting for Misfits, and maybe he can get another fight, before the end of 2025. Who knows? Look, we talked about Carl Froch right now for Darren Till, but how about Jake El Gallo Paul? They're around the same weight. El Gallo Paul, he's often criticized for his opponents, saying that they're not credible enough and that he's always picking UFC/MMA older guys. Well, now you got a UFC/MMA fighter who transitioned to boxing at 32 years old, is in a 3-fight win streak, named Darren Till. What do you guys think about that matchup for El Gallo Paul?
That's a great matchup, honestly. I mean, it'd be fireworks. First of all, the press conferences would be amazing, because you already know Jake Paul doesn't back down, and Darren Till is going to bring the heat. And he's not going to be scared about it. He's not going to be scared of Jake Paul. He's going to go in there and he's going to really take the fight to him. And honestly, I think Darren Till can win that fight pretty comfortably. Jake Paul has gotten a lot better. And right now he's going to fight, obviously, Gervonta Davis. So his hands are full. This would probably be a fight more down the line. But, I mean, I'm liking Darren Till's chances. I think he's the perfect size. I think he's like 6 feet. He rocks around like 200 plus pounds, same as Jake, and he's 32 years old. So I think he has good skills as well. I think he could definitely give Jake Paul a run for his money.
Yeah, I think so too. To be honest, I think Till would be able to beat Jake, whether within a year, 2 years, or whatever. I think he could beat Jake. I just think that both fighters have improved, but I think Darren Till is improving a lot better and a lot more dangerous as well. I'm also going on that recency bias. He just folded Rockhold like super easy, but like I don't think Jake has ever done something like that. And I think, you also see like when those MMA fighters transition into boxing, they keep some of those MMA tendencies. What we're talking about, like the wide stands and stuff like that. I feel like he's keeping that a little bit of those abilities and bringing them into the boxing scene. Like when they clinch, he's pretty good at dominating that aspect of the fight, whether it's like the opponent is hurt and he wants it clinched because he's injured, or he wants it clinched because he wants to get out of out of the corner or whatever. But he's bringing that tendencies as well, and I think it's making him an even more dangerous fighter. So if he were to fight Jake Paul, I think he would have a lot more pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing that would help Darren Till a lot would be just the activity. He's constantly fighting. I mean, Jake Paul, he fought Mike, and then he fought Chavez Jr. He's fighting like 1-2 times per year. They're mega events, so hence why. But I mean, at the same time, Darren Till is constantly fighting. I mean, this dude has not been stopping at all for 2025. So he's having himself a fantastic year. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see another fight from him before the year ends to end off 2025. So Darren Till, I think the activity would greatly benefit him. And I think it should benefit him because he's transitioning over to boxing. He's still adjusting and acclimating to the sport, changing the habits that he has for MMA and trying to work around his boxing. And as we've seen from his first fight in boxing against Anthony Taylor to now against Luke Rockhold, there's been a vast improvement. And if he continues at that pace with the activity, with the gradual improvements, I mean, I see no reason for him to not be a big threat for Jake Paul sometime in 2026. The only issue would be just the accepting of the fight from Jake. You know, him, MVP and Misfits often, collide heads. They don't really see eye to eye in many things. Hence why we haven't gotten KSI and Jake Paul. So, I mean, that'd be the biggest issue, just the whole agreeing to terms and whatnot and just working between these two rival promotional companies. But overall, I think it's a great matchup between El Gallo, Jake Paul, and Darren Till, and it's one that I think a lot of fans would greatly appreciate.
Yeah, and I think the fight would sell either way because, look, if I'm going to be honest, here's the thing. Like, I feel like Misfits sees Darren Till the same way UFC saw Conor McGregor, a guy who's brashy, a guy who is able to captivate the casuals and who doesn't back down from no one. And not only that, but he can also walk the walk, you know what I'm saying, as well as talk the talk. And so I think, whoever Misfits decides to put Darren Till in the ring with, it's going to sell out. And I think it's going to do well. And I think Darren Till will do well, whoever it is.
Yeah, and I think it's also good for like UFC fighters because they're seeing like a guy like Darren Till who made his career in the UFC. That's how he got big, but he was never a world champion, and I don't think he was ever like considered like the top pound for pound guys. He never won a belt or anything. So to see him transition to like, let's say, Misfits Boxing, who they have a pretty bad name. It's for influencers and stuff like that. But this ex-UFC guy, now he has the backing of the company. He's getting paid. I'm sure he's getting paid good money. And people love him. He's getting knockouts as well. So, like, I think it shows, like, it's great for UFC fighters as well because he's going to be like a symbol. They're going to see him be like, oh, maybe we could do that. They got Tony Ferguson to transition to Misfits as well. That's another big semi-retire. He's 40. He's old. He's big losing streak. Transitions over to Misfits. Now he's found a home. So I think, listen, I think they're doing a lot of work for like future UFC fighters to transition once they're done in the UFC to transition to Misfits.
Yeah, that's crazy because now they got El Cucuy, this past weekend as well, and now it's possible. I wasn't even thinking about that too, but like them, we could possibly be seeing in the next few years just a lot of these MMA guys. Maybe they were in Bellator or maybe they were in the bottom roster of the UFC, but like you kind of see them slowly transition into Misfits, and now you're going to see a whole bunch of like ex-MMA fighters on there. I
think it's totally possible, man. I really do think it's very possible, and Misfits is gonna go from like a mainly influencer to like influencer slash UFC guys slash MMA guys. So I think it's totally possible, and good for them, honestly. Misfits pays good money and they throw big events, so I mean the better.
Well, speaking of El Cucuy, let's transition down to the co-main event where we saw a clash for the interim middleweight title between Tony El Cucuy Ferguson and Super Salt Papi. Now, Salt Papi's coming off a emphatic KO win over King Kenny last year in the Qatar card, where it was headlined by Gibb as he took on Slim. And Salt Papi, he's taking a little break, came back to take on the biggest test of his career against former UFC fighter and Tony El Cucuy Ferguson, which we saw Ferguson snap his losing streak and begin the title run in Misfits. Thoughts about this middleweight matchup?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think the first thing that needs to be said is like good for Tony Ferguson, because I mean he's off a 8-fight losing streak. The haters were surrounding him. A lot of doubters. People were saying he should retire. And he's not in the UFC anymore. He gets cut off of the UFC roster. What is he gonna do? He doesn't want to retire. Goes to Misfits, and this was his one and only chance. I mean, if he would have lost this fight against Salt Papi, I mean, I think he would have been forced to hang up the gloves, right? So he gets the win, and good for him. I think he's a fan favorite. He's been through a lot. He had David Goggins in his corner for his last UFC fight, and that still wasn't enough. So I think it's nice for him to actually get a win. Obviously, you saw it. You saw the emotion pour out of him. So I mean, I think the first things first. I think it was good for him.
Yeah, I think. Look, I'm gonna keep that short and sweet. I'm gonna give Tony his flowers because I think I think it's really hard, especially just for his circumstance. This guy was on a 8 losing streak. Like that's not an easy thing to deal with as an athlete, right? And especially like when it's at a top of the level. You know what I'm saying? You're all your fans within the UFC are just seeing you just lose and lose and lose no matter who, the UFC's matching you up with. And then now he has this opportunity to, avenge that, just for his own sake and, fighter as a career. Or his, kind of like for his career and whatnot, kind of get that, like, if he does decide to, like, retire, then he can, end off on a good note, right? So I'll keep that short. But on the other side of the coin, Salt Papi, I was expecting a lot more from him. To be honest, I thought this was a very winnable fight for him. And yet he just kind of folded, I think. I think he started off really strong in the first round, and then the second and third, I mean, especially the second, like I could just see him just kind of like slowly letting Tony just kind of dictate the pace of the fight. And then in the third round, I think it was just too much for him.
Yeah, and I think that's a recurring theme for Salt Papi. I think he has great skills, honestly. I think he naturally got boxing. He has he has power in his hands. He's fast, he's quick. But I don't think his mentality, his mindset is as strong as maybe some other guys. Because I definitely think he broke down in that fight way too fast. And, I think it is a little bit of cardio, but mainly I think it was just mentally. He started feeling Tony Ferguson just go forward, and he kind of crumbled, man. He crumbled. And like you said, I think this was a very winnable fight for him. Honestly, I think he has better skills than Tony Ferguson. I think he could have won this fight, but he got too tired. He let Tony Ferguson get into his rhythm, get into his mode. And then lastly, I do think the stoppage was way too early. I mean, I don't even think in the amateurs they would have stopped this fight. I think the referee, I don't know what the referee was doing. He jumped in there way too early. Salt Papi could have definitely continued. But yeah, I mean, I think we should have seen a lot more about Salt Papi.
Yeah, very underwhelming from him, especially he's coming off a great win over King Kidney last year. So there's a lot of expectations. Also, just the form that Tony Ferguson was arriving for the fight. I mean, eight fight losing streak. I mean, back against the wall type of situation for him. Salt Papi had everything in his favor. He had the momentum riding with him. He had the youth. He had the skill and whatnot. So I think the fight, the matchup really did get to his head. I often see a lot better performances from Salt Papi, but I felt like he was headhunting too much. No work for the body. Allowed Tony Ferguson to get into his rhythm after the second round, and honestly, that was it. I remember watching the third round, and I was all like, "Yo, this dude, Salt Papi's already gassed. We still got 2 more rounds to go." And Tony Ferguson was amping up the pressure, and then before you know it, the fight is stopped. So yeah, I think Salt Papi, it's kind of funny because you remember when he stopped Josh Bruckner. A lot of these pro boxers, for example, Ryan Garcia, were all like, "Yo, Salt Papi, he's got skills. Maybe he could do it in the pros. Maybe he can actually transition to a legitimate professional fighter." Fast forward 2 years, and look where we're at with Salt Papi at this moment of his career. So it's kind of it tells you the level that a lot of these influencer guys are. Yes, they're good at a certain level, but they can't penetrate over, there's, like I said, there's just levels to the sport, and they're certainly not at that professional level that a lot of people think they are.
Yeah, it's true. I think Salt Papi was definitely hyped like way too much early on in his career. But I think, there is a little bit of good reason for it. Like I was saying before, I do think like naturally he is, I think he has like better skills than like KSI or somebody that, KSI's been training it for a lot longer than him. But Salt Papi, I think naturally he has better skills for it, a quicker knack for it. But I just think, I really think it's that mindset, man. I think he has to have a stronger mindset. He can't let guys like that just walk forward, and like mentally it's draining when a guy is like walking you down and like does not stop. And once you gain a lot of experience in boxing, you kind of understand how to actually reserve your energy when someone's walking you down like that. Salt Papi hasn't been able to do that, and I think he's still kind of scared about these guys that ex-UFC fighter Tony Ferguson was an interim champion in the UFC. Also in his fight against Anthony
Taylor.
Anthony Taylor. I think that fight as well was very winnable, but I think he also got a little bit nervous in there, and Anthony Taylor made it a little bit messy. Salt Papi didn't really know what to do. So I think he lacks experience, and I think he lacks a little bit of mentality. But if he gets those in order, I mean, I think he could do a lot better. I really think he could have knocked out Tony Ferguson this past weekend if he was just a little bit more experienced and a little stronger mentally. But, you know, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, for me, dude, I was expecting Darren Till to win, and then I was expecting for Salt Papi to win. But yeah, I think thinking about it a little bit more now since the fight, I think that's what it is. I think it's the mentality. I think Salt Papi does have natural abilities. I think those quick hands and those fast reflexes, I think, you know, he has that down, and I think that's just, you know, given to him at, you know, just you know, because he was born like that. But when it comes to the mentality wise, I think that's where he slipped up. I think in the first round, I think he tried to like impose like his, you know, just his style and the rhythm, and, you know, try to dictate the pace of the fight. But, you know, I think he really just broke down when he just kept landing these lefts, you know, to the face of Tony, and Tony was just going forward. He was just going forward. He just wasn't gonna quit. And I think that's what it was. I think it was more of a mental thing, because even the stoppage, he wasn't even hurt. Honestly, I think most of those punches were pity pat punches, but I think he broke down mentally first, and I think you know, he was okay with that.
I swear, literally that ending combination, like, so the main argument is like, oh, it was like 15 punches that were unanswered, and that's why the referee jumped in. It's like, okay, I get that, right? You can't just shell up and expect a referee to you know, after 15 punches, like he's gonna start looking at you closely. But the thing is, first of all, that was like Salt Papi won both rounds, both of the first rounds, and in that third round, that was like the biggest shift of momentum that Tony Ferguson had. That he actually found like really, really good success. He landed a little bit of nice clean shots earlier in the round, but Salt Papi was coming back and he was still alive. In that finishing sequence, I mean, that was the first real momentum shift, and the punches were like all arms, man. It's not like Tony Ferguson was using his whole body and like the Salt Papi was like being rocked and Bambi legs or something. You know, he put his hands up and some of the punches penetrated the defense. Like, big deal. I mean, the fight should not have been stopped. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Even in the amateurs, this fight would not have been stopped. So I don't know. I think that, you know, I don't know if they got like some very low level referees or something, but maybe they should invest a little bit in better refs to actually so these fights don't get stopped early.
You know, what's funny is that this happens always within the pro scenes than the influencer scene, but I feel like we're seeing it a lot within the influencer scene, and I think it's because of the choices of the referees that they bring in.
Yeah, the commissions they pick. We've been talking so much smack about their referees for the longest time too, and for good measure. But yeah, that stoppage was definitely questionable. A lot of people were debating it online, and personally, I do think it was an early stoppage, especially when you're putting it like that too. I mean, big momentum shift, and I mean, Salt Papi, maybe he could have, you know, fucking clinched. I mean, bro has also the I don't know why he does it all the time too against Slim. There's moments where he was on the rope and he would just let Slim work and get shots off, and those were fucking bombs that Slim was trying to land on him, and I'm like, bro, like, clinch at least. But no, he lets it happen. I'm like, dude, you cannot. That's a bad habit from Salt Papi. Like, go for the clinch or fucking get your back off the ropes before a bomb does land and you're gonna get, you know, rocked and dropped. But yeah, so like I said, this was for the interim middleweight title for Misfits, and keep in mind who the champion is. The big champ, the big Gibber, Nissan Gibb is the champion. And after the fight, Gibb posted a pic. He was like the best to ever do a pic of him and his team after the Qatar fight of last year when he took the title against Slim. Now, a lot of people were saying, you know, Tony Ferguson taking on Nissan Gibb. What kind of timeline first are we living in? Second off, who would win that matchup? Because personally, Nissan Gibb would do way better than Salt Papi, because he's just mentally just a fucking strong dude. But second off, I think he would ultimately beat Tony Ferguson. He's just a machine, man, an ultimate cardio machine. I think Tony is too old for to deal with someone of that pace and pressure like Anisan Gabe at this point of his career. Thoughts?
You know, they're both are very similar to me, because Tony Ferguson, his best attribute is his cardio. You know, you look at that fight against Salt Papi. Listen, very slow punches, slow reflexes. You know, he does not
No defense.
No defense, right? Like he's 40 years old. He looks like it, right? He fights like a 40-year-old. Okay, you know, you're not gonna expect to see a 27-year-old in there. So it makes sense why he's fighting like that. But the thing he still has is that cardio. He really is a machine. He goes forward. He can throw a lot of punches. He can stay at a very stable level all throughout the fight. Gib is like the same thing. He throws a lot of punches. He goes forward. He's not maybe the best skilled fighter. He's not the most explosive. He doesn't punch the hardest, but he's stable throughout the whole fight. He can keep the activity and the pace how he wants to. So I think they're both very similar in that way. So that won't be the deciding factor. I think the deciding factor would be the youth, the speed, the vitality, just being able to actually give your all in there. So I honestly think Gib can win that fight. Tony Ferguson, maybe if he was younger, I think he might be able to take it. But from what I saw, the reflexes, the speed, the defense, it's not there, and if he's going to rely on his cardio to try to win the fight, Gib has great cardio as well, so he can't use that against him. So I think Gib can take that fight.
Yeah, I think so too. I share some of those similar thoughts and opinions. I think Gib would win, but I think maybe it would also. I wouldn't be surprised if Tony wins. You know what I'm saying? I feel like they're just gonna go. It's gonna be like a what's that game called? Rock'em Sock'em. Those two machine robots inside of the ring. I think they're just gonna go at it, and then the first one who gets tired is gonna lose or whatever.
Well, I mean, yeah. The thing is with Gib as well. I mean, early in his career, his mentality was questionable. I mean, against that Jake in the Jake Paul fight, he crumbled like bad, man. I mean, he could have done a lot better. The lights got to him. And, it happens, right? He was still early in his career. He only had a couple of fights, and he just jumped up suddenly to fight Jake Paul. But he's come back from that, and, that shows a lot of, like, your heart, man. Like, coming back from such an embarrassing loss like that, it's hard. Everyone was talking shit about him, and they were making memes about him, about his crab walk. Bro, he went to the gym. He kept on training. He kept at it, and, he's came back. He's avenged, not avenged that loss, but he's fought some good guys, and he's come out victorious. So I think he does have a very strong mentality. I think he definitely changed something in him switched that he's 100% there.
Yeah, Nissan Gabe, the current champion for the middleweight for Misfits. They interviewed Leon, I think after the event or so, and Leon said, "I don't know if he's gonna fight." So it's always big questions whether or not Nissan Gabe will fight. But point is, Tony Ferguson is the new interim champion, and he is the next in line to take on the 7-figure Gibber. Now, going down the list, we go to the first ever Misfits MMA fight. We had the return of Dillon Danis. Last time we saw him was his embarrassing loss or disqualification to Logan Paul in the Prime card 2 years ago, against Warren Spencer, who I forgot who he fought on Misfits. I'm not really that knowledgeable. Oh, I think he fought I don't know who he fought. Anyways, first ever MMA for Misfits. It's expected to be, very dramatic, very, suspenseful. Can Dillon Danis take him down to the floor? Can Warren Spencer pull off the upset and knock him out? Well, the answers were, or the questions were all answered within 15 seconds when Warren Spencer, of all people, decided to shoot against the master grappler, and he got himself submitted within 15 seconds of this world championship MMA fight. Thoughts about the matchup?
Yeah, man. I mean, what a dumbass. Like, what? I think he got, what I think it was? He got rocked, actually, from
a jab, no?
Yeah. I think it was actually a hook. I think it was like a hook that Danis threw, and he landed it flush. And Smith, right? Spencer. He got a little bit scared, and he immediately went for a clinch. Bro, that's not gonna end well, man. Dillon Danis. Say what you want about his striking, because it's very questionable, right? It's a very if you lose to Logan Paul, I mean, it's like, you know, how good is your striking actually? But he is a actual black belt in jiu-jitsu. I mean, this guy, if you get on the ground with him, he most likely than not, you're gonna lose. You know, he's gonna tap you out. And I mean, that's what happened. You know, he shot. And Dillon got that guillotine, and you know it was over. So you can't really even say anything about this fight. The main thing you could say is this is probably the best thing Dillon could have asked for. You know, he talks so much shit, and he never backs anything up. I mean, now he can at least point to something. Oh, I submitted this guy. I submitted this guy in 15 seconds, right? Yeah. You know, so he can finally point to something after like years of inactivity or in the loss to Logan. So. You know, I think this is definitely his best outcome.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to keep this a lot more shorter. I don't have much to say about Dillon Danis. I mean, this guy got an impressive win on paper, but it's just on paper. I mean, this guy, he basically beat a nobody. Like, I mean, Spencer is a guy who's had, experience on Misfits, but has he had, like, prior fighting experience before this or even before his previous fight on Misfits? Probably not. And even if he did, it's not going to matter either way because at the end of the day, this was against a nobody. So I was actually kind of wondering if you guys wanted to see him go up against Tony. You know how Dillon went up into the ring after Tony's win, and then he was like, "Let's get it on. Let's get it on."
Well, yeah, that's the thing that was surprising too because after in the post-fight press conference. They're getting along like buddies. You know, they're both of them were talking to each other saying, you know, Dillon was all like, I'm happy that, you know, Tony Ferguson got the win. And then Tony was like, yeah, I'm happy you got the win. And they're all saying like the unimaginable duo. For some reason, they're like the friends. I don't know, you know, they're giving each other respect. So, I mean, from when Dillon got in the ring, it kind of showed that it was teasing us they might fight. But then in the post-fight press conference, both of them were you know, They said they didn't really want the fight. Tony Ferguson, he called out McGregor. Yeah, he was saying he wants to get McGregor in Misfits. I'm like, dude, McGregor's worth like $500 million. Why the fuck would he go and fight in Misfits? It makes no sense. I don't know. Tony, you know, there's a couple of screws that are loose in his head. You know, he's been fighting for a while, right? So, but yes, he called out McGregor, and Dillon was like saying that he doesn't want that. You know, it's whatever. But so I don't think that fight would happen. I mean, I don't know if Dillon really wants that fight next. He said in the lead up to this fight that they offered Masvidal, Nate Diaz, and they all declined. And that's why they got this guy, Spencer or whatever.
Well, I mean, you guys said basically everything that, you know, was meant to be said for this fight. Good win for Danis. Finally was able to beat the ghost that were beating his ass for the shameful performance against Logan Paul in the Prime card 2 years ago. And, I mean, look, now they're starting their new MMA format for Misfits. I mean, we'll see how that goes. Let's see the type of fighters they get. Because if they have to deal with Dillon Danis, who's the current champion, I mean, a lot of people are going to go out, man. Dillon Danis might reign supreme for the longest time on Misfits. And honestly, I think Danis, you know, he said that he wants a UFC shot. I don't see him getting a UFC shot at all unless he, you know, they get a big name. Like, let's say they get fucking Masvidal in there and he fucking submits Masvidal. Maybe they'll consider him and give him a chance on UFC, but I think Dillon Danis, I think he found his home on Misfits.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this was the first for Misfits, and you know, this might be something, an avenue that they could, you know, really make something big out of in the future. You know, the first UFC fight or MMA fight, and I mean, I think it was successful. You know, it ended early, but I think people liked it. You know, I think they at least enjoyed seeing Danis, you know, submit somebody. So, this might be huge for ex-UFC fighters or ex-MMA fighters, you know, like Bellator or something, PFL, if they want to transition and just go to Misfits, they can have an MMA fight or even a boxing fight. So, I think it's pretty big.
Well, we got that out of the way. Dillon Danis returned to the I was gonna say octagon, but the ring, and got the fastest submission in Misfits MMA history so far. Now going down to the last fight that we'll be covering for today, it is the Misfits heavyweight title. I was gonna say fantasy matchup featuring the champion Chase DeMoor as he took on Nathan Markin. I don't know who the fuck Nathan Markin is, but I just saw during the fight week him getting fucking egging the shit out of Chase DeMoor, and Chase DeMoor kind of going crashing out about it. But Chase DeMoor got the final laugh, and he got the stoppage win over Nathan Markin. Was a brutal uppercut that busted open his lip, started bleeding, gushing blood bad. Referee, doctor stopped the fight, and Nathan, he was all like, no, I'm going to decide when the fight ends. And it went at Chase DeMoor to try to get some punches in. And even after the fight, he started a whole riot in the backstage. There's like things being thrown at between Nathan and Chase's team, and there's whole mayhem going on backstage. But Chase DeMoor, I mean, he's the guy who's I don't know. Every time he fights, I don't expect anything big from him.
Well, I am. Every time Chase DeMoor gets into the ring, it's always going to be entertaining. Whether it's inside the ring or outside the ring, he's always going to put on a show. He is the Misfits heavyweight GOAT, so I wouldn't expect anything less.
Yo, this guy's a fan of Chase DeMoor. Yeah, he follows him and likes all his posts, dude. I swear.
Bro, ain't no way you're going to disrespect the GOAT like that. Marcron did not know what he was getting himself into. He thought that he was going to be able to get the fight called off. Boy, he was sadly mistaken.
Bro, yeah. First up, Marcone, I don't know where the hell they got him from, but the skills up there, I was all like, dude, what? It was the first round, he spammed like 200 fucking overhand rights, and they were so out of range too. Like he simply was just spamming them, and I'm like, dude, what kind of people are we matching up Chase DeMoor with? I respect Chase DeMoor just more and so in the aspect that he actually wants to fight. I mean, he even went and had I think he's had like one or two fights down in Mexico too. Yeah. So he's active, and he's shown that he wants to keep fighting. But the opponents, man, we have to do something about that.
No, and we also have to talk about, I mean, we were talking about Salt Papi and saying, he has a natural gift. He kind of caught on to boxing very quickly with very few fights. He looks good. Chase DeMoor is the complete opposite, man. This guy is like, he did not get boxing like at all. Like he's had a couple of fights and he still looks like absolute shit. I mean, the technique that he be showing is very, very subpar.
Well, that is true, yes, but I feel like, well, I wouldn't say I feel like, but I think it's reasonable to say that he has greatly improved since that first showcase that he had on Misfits. But I think it's really hard when you have to understand his context. This guy was, since he was a kid, he was trying to become a football player. Sadly, those dreams didn't come true. So then he had to divert a little bit, and so he was on a reality TV show, and then now he's boxing. Like he prepared and got his body right for to become a football player, and then out of nowhere, 360, let me do a complete different sport that I had no interest in doing, and now I'm gonna try to box and fight. There's gonna be some mistakes made, there's gonna be some errors made, and there's gonna be some laughs along the way. But I think
yo, this guy is in love with Chase DeMoor. This guy is a man.
Yeah, he said, why are you such a fan of him, bro? So I remember funny. when he was coming up too, like we made fun of him against Josh Bruckner when he pulled up, and I remember when he dropped that one dude and they kept punching him on the ground, and then he did the Adesanya fucking celebration on him. Like we were shitting on him, but now I feel like you had a 360, man. You're the one who's you're backing him now.
I am backing him, but I feel like, look, here's the thing. Look, ever since this company Misfits was created, this idea of influencer boxing, showcasing boxers of guys who maybe had a little bit of fights or people who just have like some type of influence. Like I always thought that idea was very fascinating, and I honestly thought that we weren't going to see Chase that much longer, but just for him to stick around, especially with a sport this difficult, I figured, I got to give him, his flowers.
I mean, it is true. He's kind of like emblematic. He's like what the whole influencer boxing is like made out of or what it's supposed to be. This guy is he was a TV star, right? Like he was on Love Island or one of those shows. So I mean, that's like literally kind of what the point of the whole thing was, you know. But it's just funny. It's just so funny looking at his skills, man. I mean, the skills are so bad.
Well, the uppercut was no joke though.
That was a good uppercut too, and he busted open his lip from that. But I don't know at this point, I guess I don't really have. I'm pretty neutral about Chase DeMoor at this point. The only thing I would say is sometimes his promotion, when he's advertising for his fights, they're a bit cringe. But I mean, he's getting up in there. He's more active than Dean. Oh my gosh, bro! And a lot of these other fighters. So I'll give him that. But I think Misfits definitely has to bring in some more heavyweights.
I mean, it kind of shows the level of the heavyweight division if this guy is the champion. I mean, like, what level are we at right now? I mean, there's some good fighters on Misfits in the lower divisions that you look at them and you're like, okay, he could be like an actual amateur fighter, maybe a low professional fighter. Chase DeMoor is like a newbie, and this guy's the world champion. Like, come on.
Yeah, he's the face of Misfits heavyweight boxing at the moment. So hopefully Mams Taylor and KSI can do some scouting in there, and try to fill up their heavyweight roster a bit more, to a higher level, because definitely like this dude Nathan Marcoin, fucking terrible, bro. I was all like, dude, what am I watching? This type of level that they shit on influencer boxing for. Yeah. But I mean, Chase DeMoor got the win. And, he started throwing it back on that dude. Also, that shit was so weird. But I guess
hey, that was Rudo's favorite part. That was his favorite part of the fight.
Hell no, man. Anyways, Chase DeMoor retained his heavyweight title against Marcoin, and is looking for bigger things for perhaps 2026 or whenever they decide to put him on the next card. But I think we covered everything that we wanted to cover for today's episode. Let us know down below your thoughts about the Tony Ferguson and Salt Papi fight. Do you think the stoppage was early? Who do you want to see Tony Ferguson fight next? Do you think Anisan Gibb beats Tony Ferguson? Also, let us know about Darren Till and Luke Rockhold. Do you think Darren Till has a chance to beat Jake El Gallo Paul? Or do you think he's more so suitable for the Misfits level? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow us on all forms of social media. We are on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Lastly, we're trying to build up a community on Discord, and you guys joining would be greatly appreciated. This was Pablo, and I'm with Rudo and Nasa, and this was the Last Round Podcast. Thank you for watching.